Hi everyone, this is William with the Grand Duke Dmitri Diary series back in my usual place. The lighting is a little weird, but oh well. I suppose this shirt requires an explanation, so it's simply one that I bought because it was high quality but so cheap it was on sale. I guess we know why. A while back, and I've only worn it like 3 times, so I figured, well, even though I know that if Dmitri were present here at this moment, he would be scandalized by it, and other people as well, not just him. Okay, I'm gonna wear it. I bought it, I'm gonna wear it. So hopefully it doesn't look that ridiculous. Okay. Yes, in yesterday's video, we did 1915, and Dmitri had quite an evening in Moscow, and indeed, next time we visit him in 1915, he will wake up with a hangover. But today we're back to 1939. I hope you don't mind all this switching around. It's temporary. I think that now that I'm back in the U.S., I'm going to go ahead and, after we're finished with this absolutely fantastic Grunwald letter, I'm going to go ahead and just focus on 1915. I'm thinking even of maybe doing a podcast, not giving up what I'm doing on YouTube, but now that I've got a body of work, going through and doing something in a more organized way, starting at the beginning of Dmitri's writings and going through and telling the whole thing like a story, which, as you can see, is what my inclination is anyway. Not a fictional story as in my novel, but a story based on the way we, all of us, have lives that are stories that unfold as stories. Okay, so we'll see about that. So yeah, our recap from the last time we did 1939, we found out that Dmitri was anti-war and anti-Soviet, that he was, because of his anti-Soviet feelings at that time, he was unhappy with the fawning attention that Mikhail Maisky was getting in London. And he was worried that an alliance between Britain, France, and Russia would provoke Germany into war. We, of course, know that there was no way to stop Germany from going to war, other than just letting Germany swallow up all of Europe without any opposition, and that wasn't on the table. But, of course, Dmitri didn't know what we know. He could have looked at Hitler and possibly figured it out, but people aren't always good at doing that. Grunwald seems to be better at it. And I'm constantly getting in trouble and having to backtrack because I read things, I just basically glance at them and skim them, and then make statements on that basis. And so in the last 1939 video, or no, in yesterday's video at the end, I said that this particular section of Grunwald's letter was going to show how much Grunwald and Dmitri were on different sides of the page, or on different pages, I should say. But I've realized that I read it before I translated it from the French, actually not from the Russian, that I misread it. And so, yeah, we'll see about that. Our cast today is an interesting one, although we're not talking about anybody who is actually present with Grunwald. That would be impossible. We have 2 rulers of Russia, Catherine the Great and Nicholas II. We have 2 Russian diplomats, Benkendorf and Izvolsky, and we have Hitler, another head of state. Okay, so let's dive in. For my part, I remain perplexed. It's certain that the triple alliances Russia has concluded over the course of the last 2 centuries with the Western powers haven't been to the benefit of any of the signatories. It's certain that a force majeure and not an absence of good faith or a penchant for treachery has pushed Russia onto other paths. Toward this entente with the Central Powers, So push them toward this entente with the Central Powers, who have guaranteed Russia's western frontiers and permitted her to accomplish her true historical mission in the East. I have recently started to study the lives and works of the great Russian diplomats of the 18th and 19th centuries. Some interesting information can be found there. In particular, there are striking analogies with the period when Panin negotiated the English alliance under Catherine II, and Benkendorf and Izvolsky conducted the same negotiations on behalf of Nicholas II. All these men knew, as we know today, that nothing would be as advantageous to Russia as an accord with the Germanic nations, and today as well, it is only an agreement of this kind that would open an easy way for us to recover the lands that were wrested from us by Poland. Hold on a second, I have to make a note here. I sometimes overlook things. Okay, it is only an agreement of this kind that would open an easy way for us to recover the lands that were wrested from us by Poland. The question is whether an accord, or even the semblance of an accord with Hitler's Germany, is within the realm of possibility. We imagine in our country, wrote Benkendorf in November 1908, that we can choose between a rapprochement with England and a rapprochement with Germany. In reality, our choice is between a rapprochement with England or an isolation that would lead to an Anglo-German entente. Germany, he wrote further, has nothing to fear, alas, from an isolated Russia. It is doubtful that she even has sufficient fear of Russia and France combined. That would be a risk she believes herself willing to take. But she has an infinite fear of England. All her shenanigans here, the infinite effort she has taken to placate this country by all possible means, are not the only proof of that for me. End quote. Remember, this was a quote from Benkendorf back in 1908. Those words of our former ambassador remain true today, with all due respect to Grand Duke Dmitri. So Dmitri wouldn't agree with them. Okay, so, there's so much great stuff in this letter, and I would love to be able to take it apart piece by piece, and I would have to do that in the context of doing my own research, because I'm not at all an expert. So yeah, forget that. A very interesting reference to Russia's historical mission in the East, and that it was the feeling that Grunwald had that only an alliance with Germany would allow Russia to set about fulfilling that mission. And this, this almost sort of bitterness against England goes back to the Great Game. Sort of one of the epicenters of that was in Persia, or modern-day Iran, as Dmitri found out when he was there, that the country was partitioned between English and Russian parts, the Russian part in the north, the English part in the south, where the oil fields were. And so in this idea that Nicholas certainly had, that Russia should turn east, that Russia's destiny lay in the east, the big rival, you had China and Japan. China was not doing that well. You had then the big rivals were Japan and England, that I believe were actually allies. So that would all be turned upside down during the Second World War. And so, Grunwald still has this anti-British, doesn't mean so much that he was pro-German. It doesn't at all mean that he was pro-Hitler, but in trying to be very pragmatic, this sort of realpolitik, he's saying, look, with Germany to guarantee our western border, we can turn our eyes to the east. Well, unfortunately for him, the Nazis also considered that their destiny lay in the east. And so that was just not going to work. And clearly, I don't know how clear that was at the time, but if it was something that was known, then of course Grunwald had overlooked it. Okay, so Grunwald did write a book. He's referring to this historical research that he was doing at that time to Maria, and he actually did write a book with the title 3 Centuries of Russian Diplomacy, Trois Siècles de Diplomatie Russe. That's one I'd like to read, but not just now. And he refers to these Russian ambassadors who made overtures to England, one of whom was Nikita Ivanich Panin. who was trying to put something together called the Northern Accord. It actually would have included both Prussia and Britain. And, he was trying to put that together. Things didn't go his way. Then we have the two who were working on an entente with England during Nicholas II's reign, after the Russo-Japanese War, which there was an incident where Russia sunk some British fishing boats, if you can imagine, and almost caused hostilities between Britain and Russia. But after the war, there were some proponents of an alliance, not just with France, which existed, but also with England. And so you had Alexander Konstantinovich Benkendorf, who was the ambassador to London between 1903 and 1917, and you had Alexander Petrovich Izvolsky, who was the foreign minister until 1910. He believed in constitutional monarchy. He was very much a moderate and a far-sighted person, and for all those reasons he clashed with Nicholas II, so he was out by 1910. But he and Benkendorf together engineered the Anglo-Russian Entente of 1907, which would end up being important during the First World War. It would end up being something to build upon for that alliance. This next reference is to lands wrested from us by Poland. And we know from what Dmitri was writing to his sister in October of this same year, 1939, that he was pro-Poland, to the extent that he wanted Poland to remain an autonomous country. He didn't want it to be swallowed up, either by Germany or especially by Soviet Russia, as he saw it. And so in this, he does indeed, as I said yesterday, very much differ from Grunwald, who, as you can see here, is strongly anti-Polish, as was at that time the German ambassador to Britain. I've forgotten his name. He was there in Britain at the same time that Grunwald was paying these visits to Britain, to England, I should say, London specifically, and he had this really, for some reason, just sort of obsessive grudge against Poland and wanted Poland to be wiped off the face of the earth. Well, that's not what Grunwald wants, but Grunwald wants to go back to the days when Poland is part of the Russian Empire, or the eastern part of Poland is part of the Russian Empire. That's what he aspires to. I guess whether it's the Soviet Union or not, he wants those lands to be restored, and so that puts him a bit on the German side, insofar as he stupidly thinks that is going to be allowed to happen by Nazi Germany. And let's see. So Dmitri, being anti-Soviet and pro-Polish at this time, would not have agreed with Benkendorf's assessment, and doesn't agree either with Grunwald in a lot of ways, because he doesn't want there to be an accord between Britain and Russia. He's anti-Soviet now. He doesn't want that. So, we've already talked about that. And one of the reasons, I think, is also that he's anti-war. And he's, fingers crossed, he's really hoping that war can be averted. And, if it sounds like he's treating Germany better than he should in his assessment, it's because he's still hoping, wishful thinking, pie in the sky, hoping that war can be averted. Okay, what do we have next time? Well, we're going back to 1915. As I said, Dmitri will wake up with a hangover. He'll have a very varied day, starting out with actually listening to a sermon at a church service. He goes to see Aunt Ella and finds her at a church service, and then having an interesting talk with the wife of the natural son and only child of Grand Duke Alexei Alexandrovich, Dmitri's uncle. and he gets together with, and the man was also named Alexei after his father, and he gets together with Alexei's wife, and they discuss Alexei, which is interesting. I didn't know he was interested in that or had those contacts. But then in the evening, Nastya reappears, and we go right back to living it up with actresses in Moscow. All right, so do come back for that. Thanks as always for watching. Let me hear from you if you have any comments or questions or anything, and see you next time. Bye.